tell me when you're ready.
I am ready.
Okay. One of the greatest problems in the church, I talked about it before, but now I want to talk it on a practical level, is the structure of the church. So everyone knows after Vatican II, we had an absolute renewal of every facet of church life except the structure. Now, of course, it's easy to blame the bishops that they wanted to keep their power, but somehow, whether that was the motivation or not, we don't know. We can't be judgmental, but it was a necessary change, reform rather, to get back to the way the early churches operated. We want to avoid the error that Pius XII talked about, excessive archaism, just being like the first century church to be like it, which is impossible. But the structures are there in Scripture. And the Protestants tried to bring this reform back, but of course, as history documents, they were very unsuccessful, and John Calvin turned Geneva around to be worse than in the Papal States. The problem is, in an egalitarian church, which everybody is absolutely equal, and we all believe it, then you can't have the kind of rulers you have in other societies, even a representative democracy. So this has created, and this is a burning question in the church. It might be in the back of our people's minds, but you see it everywhere. So the new documentation and understanding of Scripture, the very limited success of the Protestant Reformation, etc., do not make the problem less urgent. So we know the idealistic one, or the best one, is the Acts of the Apostles. Then the way Paul founded and ran his churches and appointed successors, or they were elected. The Catholic epistles, the 7 Catholic epistles, and variegated snippets from the book of Revelation show us a lot about the Jesus churches, the first people who operated what we call a church. And there, everything was election. And this is before democracy was put into practice in the Western world. It was a notch above the idealistic Greek city-states and Aristotle's De Politica. It's way beyond Thomas Jefferson's wildest thoughts. And that is, if everybody's equal, and everybody is a priest, everybody's a prophet, everybody is a servant, then this community has the right and the obligation and the privilege to elect its leaders and to depose them. We know that the church turned to the example of the Roman Empire after Constantine and gave us a hierarchical church. So the Pope is the 4-star general, and all the way down to the pastor, I guess, is a sergeant, and the people in the pews, who should be in chairs, are private first class, or whatever they're called today. So with plenty of biblical information and modeling, and I'm surprised Cardinal Dulles, that just died recently, didn't put this in his book, Models of the Church, but he didn't. And that is that if everybody is truly equal, free election of every person that can think and vote is necessary. And therefore you don't have appointees to the task of what we call a bishop or overseer. Or you don't have the local bishop appointing pastors. They have to be elected. And in many Eastern Rite Catholic churches, they still are. Like the Melkite Rite, they have 22 bishops in the world. They're mostly Lebanese and Arabic people. But they had those 22 bishops get together, form a synod, a meeting, a convention. They elect the bishop and they notify the Pope, not the other way around. Plus, another little aside is the Ruthenians are going to allow married priests, which is interesting. one of our Eastern rites. And a recent survey of the Polish priests, very conservative group, voted against celibacy. Celibacy is something outside the priesthood, but it enhances the hierarchical and clerical model. That's why I brought it up. I was able, with the special permission of Bishop Sullivan, for 3 years in St. Caterina in Poquoson, Virginia, and I implemented it again, I guess without permission, in Holy Family, Virginia Beach, was to put this into practice so that using this biblical model, we had elders, not an age, elected people from East House Church. And we didn't vote. You can't vote. That's for democracies. In church, you had to discern. And sometimes it takes a much longer time than voting. And in some cases, we know in the past, in various churches, Eastern and Western, to get to a consensus, they had an issue of fast. And one of the purposes of which fasting, of course, is to get your mind in tune with your body and the rest of your psyche. So they always came to conclusions by consensus. Even in the most reactionary textbooks in medieval times, when the hierarchy and clericalism and monasticism are riding high, you still see all the theologians saying that the final way to live out your faith structure, the teachings of the church, inherited from, extricated from scripture and tradition, all have to come from the sensus fidelium, that is the consensus of all the faithful, bringing into practice the principle of egalitarianism, which is now next to non-existent in our church. So for the 3 years, and then it went on for 12 years, and that's still going on, each house church, usually by neighborhoods to make it very eclectic and very open, not special ministries, house churches. I'm against those because they get all the liturgy people together and then they get to be a clique instead of a house church. And you never know, in a house church, some 80-year-old lady might have the best idea in the whole community. A lady perhaps had graduated from the 7th grade. So that's real egalitarianism put into practice. So anyway, we elected elders, and of course some argue against the numbers. It got up to 24. In Holy Family, it got up to 54. But that has nothing to do with it. These are elected members from the local communities that together make the local parish. And they elected their elders, and we discerned any major need of the parish, or ministries, or how much of the budget we should spend for the poor, how much of the debt we were going to pay off, were we going to have scholarships, and were we going to reopen the thrift shop or not, etc. And people say, well, then you're just going to have chaos. This is the old argument. If you have believing, faithful people who seek only the good of the church and the world and their neighbor, and really are in love with Jesus as disciples, then they know how to discern, even if a fast sometimes seems to be necessary according to ancient custom. So we put it into practice. The big example was Holy Family, which is a second church I had with elders that I was privileged to pastor. And I wanted to finish paying off the debt to get a new look on life, what we were going to do. And of course, one of the prophetic tasks of a pastor, and lots of times a lot of good lay people in the parish, is to keep making sure that the amount of money spent on the poor is way up, and a certain percentage, and that you don't use the debt to excuse taking care of the poor, which is a common thing. We'll take care of the poor later. Well, the poor are in dire straits now, even before the economic crash. So, and there's always poor. That's why I founded the thrift shop in Pocosin. They said, there's no poor people here. Well, the week after we opened it, we saw all kinds of poor people from Pocosin and surrounding York County and Newport News and Hampton even coming to it. So, in the case of the principal of the laity and the pastor, not the clergy, we don't want any clergy, I wanted to pay off the debt. They wanted to put in parking lot lights, which there was no parking lots in a sophisticated suburban parish. So I voted against it, and 54 voted for it. So that's what, if you're going to have, consensus, that's what the pastor has to put up with. He can't just automatically make up his own mind in secret after purported private conversations with God, which is not prayer at all. It's just moving your will around to fit what you smell from God or you heard from God. And nobody hears directly from God anyway, except fundamentalists, Catholic and Protestant.